Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this author interaction of the 2022 NLF Reading Challenge. My name is Karthika, and I'm very excited to be here. We hope you are too. Before we begin the interaction, do allow me to give you a brief introduction about the NLF Reading Challenge, followed by a few housekeeping rules for today's session. The NLF Reading Challenge is a 4-month-long reading event from March to June 2022 for students between 10 to 13 years of age. It runs for students across India on the competitive and the non-competitive tracks. In addition to fun book-based activities and regular author interactions, the challenge will conclude with a quiz competition that will see the 3 best teams win gold, silver, and bronze engraved trophies respectively, certificates of achievement, and a great set of books. For today's event, please use the Q&A box to type out your questions or your responses to what's being discussed during the session. If you're a student, a teacher, or a school librarian, please mention the name of your school along with your question as well. Today, we are privileged to have with us the talented author-illustrator duo, CG Salamander and Rajiv Eipe. CG Salamander is a writer, editor, and journalist who splits his time between Chennai and the Netherlands. He likes manga, cows, science fiction, and is currently working on his first graphic novel for adults. Rajiv Eipe lives in Bangalore and works on animation and illustration projects. He also likes to doodle in his sketchbook, drink more coffee than is good for him, maintain an untidy workspace, and gaze into vacant spaces at short intervals. He won the 2021 Big Little Book Award in the illustration category. Welcome, Salamander and Rajiv. We're very happy to have you with us today.
Hello, I'm Rajiv.
Hi.
Hello, hi. I'm CG Salamander, Rajiv's twin, if you've seen that little thing over there.
All right, so before we begin the session, or as we begin, would both of you like to do a reading or speak about the book?
So this is actually a comic or a graphic novel. So I'm actually going to be reading from the blurb of the book. And then I think we can go right into the Q&A. Okay, so an outcast in the world of humans, Mythili lives in the outskirts of a magical wilderness. But as she makes new friends in the realm of monsters, she must learn to be careful, because some monsters are just like humans, mean, nasty, and out for blood. Join Mythili and the Minotaur on their very first adventure in an outlandish world where nothing is as seems.
Thanks so much for that. For the really quick reading, Salamander and
yes,
Rajiv. So let's get started. Now, both of you have talked about the fact that Mythil and the Minotaur originated as a set of comic strips in Jellyfish Monthly, which is a magazine that you used to edit, Andrew, at Salamander. And therefore, how different was that story from what we're seeing in Mythili and the Minotaur? Are we seeing the origin story in Mythili and the Minotaur?
Who is this Andrew you speak of, first and foremost? But to answer your question, what you're seeing is actually a bigger picture of what Mythili and the Minotaur was. It started off as a one-page per issue comic that Rajiv and I wanted to create, and it was the way I actually pitched it to Rajiv was, hey, Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes, and how short those are. Let's do something like that. And then Rajiv was completely on board for that. And that's also how you kind of catfish someone or reel them in. Everything else, I don't know what happened, but over the years when we started working on it, it just started developing into a much bigger story. And what you see, I mean, Mythili and the Minotaur, as published in Jellyfish Monthly, it kind of had the heart of the story in it. But what we then went back and did was we felt that for it to be turned into a comprehensive book or a story, it needed certain gaps to be filled. So we kind of just went around filling these gaps and creating backstories and so on and so forth. Rajiv, for instance, created all the world building, and he'll talk about that right now, I guess. Please feel free to butt in.
No, like Salamander said, these were episodes, and he catfished me, saying that we'll do a comic strip which became a page, which then became 2 pages, and then 3 pages, and by the end of it, it was 4 pages per episode. But it was great fun with these great characters. But because they were episodic, I think each thing felt like a piece by itself. And then there were a lot of jumps. The story would jump ahead and introduce a whole bunch of new characters, and to make it one single graphic novel, I think, like he said, we had to go back and cement over a lot of those gaping holes, and also restructure it a little bit so that there were some nice arcs and things like that. Yeah, and that's how it became the book as we know it. The second book that we're working on, because it was always intended to be a book, is far more straightforward, I think.
Okay, I'm curious to find out how it's straightforward, but thank you for that. And we'll get to that in just a bit. So both of you just answered a question that we got from Ananya from Trivandrum International School, who said, what made you think to make a comic? So I hope that answers your question, Ananya. Then there's a question from Ishan Jain, which ties in with one of our questions as well about characters. Ishan asks, are any characters from this book based on real life? And one of the things that we were thinking about is the fact that you've done several interactions with readers on this book by now. So have you heard from anyone on what is it that drew Minotaur to make friends with Mythili, such good friends with Mythili, within a week of her joining school, is one question. And another is, Mythili also just seems very alert to noises. Is she just a really attentive person? Because she hears the school ghouls, she hears Arual, or does it link with some of her powers that we don't quite see enough of in the book? So that's technically 3 questions, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I can just start with the Mythili being an attentive person. It's actually the opposite. Mythili is constantly looking for distractions. So when you're sitting in class, you're bored out of your mind and you're looking for something else. And which is why when she's doing something, she often finds something that is completely different going on. And then she just plunges into that, and that leads to various adventures. And I think that is one aspect that might be coming from me. And I've always thought of it as the Minotaur being Raji, basically, but because, very well-natured young man with a lot of manners. So that to me screams.
I also say no to all sorts of adventures as a knee-jerk reaction, and then demurely follow whoever else is going into the adventure, the way Minotaur does. So in that sense,
with caution.
Yeah, with caution.
That's interesting. So you're saying that Mythili and Minotaur sort of mirror who the both of you are?
Not really, but yeah, we've now, after going through a whole round of questions, we're slowly finding all these tiny little character traits that we can identify with. But the weirdest thing about Mythili and the Minotaur is that whoever we speak to, they seem to have different favorite characters, be it the van driver or be it Nagesh. A lot of people seem to really like Nagesh. And I think Nagesh is my favorite character as well. But I think there's someone in this book for everyone to identify with, and it's really strange. I don't know what the criteria is. Maybe it reflects a bit of who they are, but it's just interesting to hear who someone's favorite character is. What do you think, Rajiv? Who's your favorite?
I was thinking about, have we heard from readers about what draws Minotaur to Mythili? And I actually haven't. Have you, Salamander? Because that would be wonderful. I have not heard from readers.
No, readers have not commented on this, but I think of all the kids who are kind of afraid of Mythili when she joins school, Minotaur is the only one who it's just kind of normal and just sees her as a normal child. So I think that's the basis of the friendship. It's one that stems from accessibility, honestly. No one else is talking to Mythili.
I think also deep down, Minotaur craves some adventure, even though he says no to everything. I think that might be.
Yeah, that's also you projecting. So
Yeah.
That's an interesting perspective. I think the next time we read the book, we might read it with fresh eyes. So again, now speaking of characters and speaking of interesting characters, there's also the typical sort of antagonist that every book needs. And here we see there's Arachne, who's like a definitive antagonist. But there also seem to be similarities between Maithili and Arachne's backstories. They're both very powerful. They've both been shunned by people they once regarded as friends. They've had a turbulent past, and they're both tortured souls. Maithili's traumatic memories are more deep down, whereas Arachne's are literally more at the surface. So if it weren't for Minotaur, do you feel like Mythili might have gone down a path that's similar to Arachne's?
that's actually a wonderful question. I have no idea who is sitting and reading these books and coming up with these awesome questions. Rajiv and I were actually, we are constantly amazed by the questions that are brought to us. And yes, yeah. And to answer your question, it's a big resounding yes. Without kind of the Minotaur, and if Mythili was absolutely alienated, that's the path she will head down. And it's a really nice dichotomy, actually, of Mythili and Arachne, because it's like you said, one is in touch with what happened, and the others, well, their memories are completely repressed. And the way these two characters kind of evolve is something that I'm really interested in, and if they would kind of cross paths or yeah. So what do you think, Rajiv?
No, that's right. I was just wondering if Mythili is a tortured soul that I'm not so sure of. She perhaps there's a lot of latent trouble brewing, but she's very much a reckless young person, eager for adventure and thrill and all that, and open to meeting a lot of new people and helping people out and all that. Bright, shiny-eyed. Yeah, but it was interesting in the question to see the interpretation of the characters. Very interesting.
Thanks for that. We also have a comment that's coming from Vigil, who was one of our earlier guests and who knows both of you very well. Says she loves the Arachnid teacher.
Yeah, me too.
Ooh,
my favorite character.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And also the backstory of Arachne was one of those cracks that was kind of papered over from the original episodes, and I think it's always nice to see what drives a person to do bad things. That's perhaps the most interesting thing about any story for me, like the motive.
Right. And speaking of that, about what drives a person to do bad things, at one point in the book, no spoilers for those who haven't read it, Arachne is also hurt or attacked in the same way that she had sort of hurt her friend. Was that intentional to have the cycle of retribution?
I read that question and then I went back to the book and I saw it for the first time, to be honest. Salamander, was it intentional in the script?
I hope, I wish I can say yes and sound very smart, but no, it was completely unintentional. It was basically based on math, like how many, it's a spider that's got a lot of limbs, can afford to lose one, then crawl around and it would still be okay. It didn't seem as cruel at the time. So okay. Yeah.
All right, thanks for that. One of the images that really stayed with a lot of readers and sort of enduring image from the book is the setting where we see Monster Town, we see Human Town, we see the school, and we see Mythili's house, and we see the Bridge of Bones, and we see the smoking flesh-colored river running through the center of the page. So is there something that inspired this for both of you? Have you seen similar iconic visuals in books or film before? I'll hold it up as well. For those who don't know what
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
talking about. This one.
We can all hold it up. So much redundancy with that.
Salamander, I drew what you described. Did you have a particular image in your head? Did that come from somewhere in particular?
I mean, it kind of does. So if anyone's been to Kodaikanal and to Fairy Falls near Pambarpuram, you'll see very similar imagery where there's a stream running, and but it's kind of the opposite of that. It's very nice and very pretty and very beautiful. It's a lot of grass, and you see a few houses there and a nice pretty stream. And I thought, it'll be really cool to have magma instead of water, and almost instantly, you change something that is pretty and it becomes slightly menacing. And the bones, actually, I think over a call we were discussing how it would, we were just discussing the bridge, basically. It should be rickety or something. And then suddenly we were talking about dinosaurs or something. And then I remember we just decided to have the bones there. And I'm really happy we did that, because I think it really sets the world, basically. It gives you like an instant like a glance into what this world is going to look like. So yeah.
For my part, when I was drawing the images, the Nilgiris and Kunur and Ooty are places that I'm a little bit more familiar with than Kodaikanal. So those, just the hills and things like that, sort of took shape from my experiences. As also, the school bus and the school, my school didn't lean over a pool of magma, but at least in form and shape, those. So the combination of stuff that's really familiar from our childhoods, and then to place that against otherworldly, bizarre scenarios is a pet project, I think, for both of us.
Yeah. And it works really well, so it's paid off.
Thank you.
And one of the things, so something that we've seen before in your work, Salamander, is, there's these sinister cowled figures who turn up. There's brave vehicle drivers who turn up. We've seen this in your earlier book, City of Rubble. And Rajiv, in your earlier animation work, we've seen a boy turn into this proud and uber-confident Rakshas. And we see similar elements sort of repeating in Mythili and the Minotaur, with the dark hands of the underworld, who are cowled figures. There's van driver Helsing with the complicated spelling, who's the brave vehicle driver. And we have Mr. Poochandi, who's the proud and super confident Rakshas-like figure. So how much of your own, clearly you do have a fascination for elements that are familiar and sort of offsetting it with the bizarre. But how much of your own personal fascination with mythological creatures finds an outlet in this book?
I think I need to kind of answer this in two parts. The first is with regards to the van driver and the cowled creatures and all of that. So I think like an auto driver was always a huge part of my childhood, because going to school and coming back, and we'd all be like jammed into the crowded auto, and I'd always sit in front, basically, which is the best place to be.
Oh yeah, I used to sit in front too.
Yeah, it's only the cool kids get to sit in front.
I don't know about the cool kids, but
just go with it now.
Sorry.
But yeah, so with City of Rubble, I actually see City of Rubble as a prototype to a lot of the things that I'm working on right now, because as you mentioned, you see the cowled figures, and then you see this character who basically needs to protect these kids, and you can draw a parallel to that with City of Rubble as well. But more importantly, I think the reason I had the cowled creatures there was because I needed a faceless villain. So this is something that I want to build on, or rather that we will be building on, wherein you have this otherwise two-dimensional villain that over the course of the series, you kind of see them grow and build. And then you use cowls and things that are mysterious to portray an organization or a bigger evil that is behind them. And with City of Rubble, my learning was that I tried to do it all at once at the same time. So I couldn't pace myself. But with Maithili, I think we've decided, let's make this into how many ever books that it's going to be, and really take our time with this, essentially. So I think the cowl creatures are coming from as a plot device that I've tried, tested, and know works. And it's the same with these with the driver as well. As a matter of fact, like since Vigil is here, I think Vigil will also know like the Home of Cloud books, three of them, which also kind of tried to figure out something that was Mythili and the Minotaur esque, and it's kind of just taking that and making it bigger and longer. And yeah, that's at least my way of going about it. Rajiv?
The question was about fascination for mythological creatures. I can't say that I was ever overly fascinated with mythology in that sense, but creatures and grotesques and weird weird characters were always very interesting for me from my childhood. And my mother actually thought there was something wrong with me, because she would ask me, why don't you draw some nice looking people for a change? And I was always drawn to and yeah, so in that sense, these characters were a lot of fun to draw, and I might have let loose a little bit too much.
When we apply for grants and things that are vaguely important sounding, what we say is we are trying to develop a sense of indigenous fantasy based on non-Vedic mythological and oral traditions from different parts of India, and that's what we're trying to.
And now we can't do that anymore, Salamander, because you've just let it out in a very public forum.
Yeah, nobody's going to like look at this, but that's kind of what we're trying to do, like we're trying to create a new mythological.
Those are shots fired at the Neem Literature Festival, Salamander.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not terribly really politically correct, Salamander, but it's fine.
Yeah.
We will wish you the best of luck with the grant applications.
Yeah, no, the grantees are not going to watch this, trust me.
Let's hope so.
Well, speaking of that, not your grant applications, but speaking of how you're planning to you're pitching it as like an indigenous, indigenous take on myths, graphic novels. And so you're sort of popularizing these aspects. There's also these really wonderful references which people from Tamil Nadu would get. Because there are words that derive from Tamil. There's Arval, there's Uruvil village, which would translate to village. There's Madam Rakkama referring to Minotaur as Minotaur Kanna. So do you think readers from other parts of the country might wonder about what this might mean? And have you as readers, because you read a lot of Indian books, there's Indian comics, have you seen references to languages that you don't know, but you've sort of made sense of it from context in Indian books?
So, I mean, thank you for the village thing. That's literally
we need to put that in the next book, Salamander, on a train, railway station sign or something like that, like village, and then translation.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And when we were just discussing the second book basically, and then I had a very it was like a joke about Gangodhar and Shaktiman, and they were like, nobody will get this, and I said, no, someone will get this. So we like playing with language and changing it a bit, because what we've noticed is that it doesn't really hinder anyone's reading experience per se. Like if you don't get it, you'll just gloss over it and go. But then for someone who really gets it, they'll feel, oh my God, this is something that I'm really in on. And then it just becomes like a kind of joke almost. But to, address the mythological part of it again, we are working on a another set of books that are that completely use Indian or rather Tamil mythological beasts, mostly referenced in Sangam literature. And I think Mythili and the Minotaur, or within the first book, the way the world building works is that we use other myths like people who used to trade with India during that point of time. So the Greek myths and maybe a bit of Egyptian myths there as a sort of crux to lead into our own indigenous fantastical mythos, essentially. So I don't know if I kind of like deviated there with this, but or if I'm still like now conscious, holy, like maybe these Grant viewers are going to watch this, and now I'm just kind of, yeah. So
Thanks for that, Salamander. What about you, Rajiv? What do you think?
I think these words, like Salamander said, I don't think it hinders the reading or the understanding of the story. Like you said, context makes these things sort of work. But I actually feel that they add a lot of color and texture to the story, and for that, I'm really happy to have words like kana and pishi, and just the richness of some of these words and where they come from and what they represent is wonderful. I am all for having them, and knowing what it means is one Google search away, and I don't think young people have too much trouble with stuff like that. So I'm terribly for it.
Absolutely. It really adds a lot of charm to the books
Yeah.
when that happens. So since we're almost at the end of our time, I'll ask you my last question, which I know all of the fans of Mythili and the Minotaur are possibly also waiting for. We know that there's another book in the series. We know that the next book in the series is Forest of Forgotten Fears. But we've also heard rumors that there might be 3 books, there might be 5 books, there might be 9 books. And therefore, do we get to see what happens to Maithili's parents? Do we get to see more of Minotaur's parents and their lace-covered sofa and the little cupboard?
this is a question for Rajiv to answer. I've always taken lead on this question and answered, and it's good to put him in a.
There are 3 books. There are 3 books. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're working on the second book, which is called Forest of Forgotten Fears, and like I was saying, we're in the thick of just planning all the pages and how it's laid out, and we've drawn out I have drawn out some thumbnails. We have had long calls with our wonderful editor Smith Zaveri, and yeah, so it's very much in the most exciting and exciting stage of being made. And there are 3 books for now. We don't know. Salamander has, in every interview, he throws out some numbers, and he makes sure that there are people around, so he's safe. But sometimes it's 5 and sometimes it's 9. But let's say 3 for now.
It's always 9. When I say like 5 or 6, it just means like 3 is 9. Already for certain. We've signed the contract on it. But yeah. Yeah, the way I see it, it's a slow burn, and you need that space to create a series. And I do think the first 3 is like I think there's a story of how R.L. Stine, when he was creating Goosebumps, asked for 4 books before to prove himself. I think this is when he was an editor at Scholastic. This might be completely wrong. Someone please fact check me, but I think this is what happened, and it started selling when his 3rd book was out, and that's when it really kind of became the sensation that it was. And I think with a lot of fiction, at least, you need those 3 books for people to even know what it is about. And so I think with Mythili, we have had the good fortune of being able to sign a 3-book deal. So at the very least, we will have 3 books out. And the next one comes out this October.
Yes.
Okay, That's excellent. Thank you so much for this. It's been, we are all looking forward to reading book 2, Forest of Forgotten Fears. And we wish the Maithili and the Minotaur series all the very best. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rajiv and Salamander. This has been a really fun half hour for all of us.
Thanks so much, Karthika.
Thank you so much for having us and for all the wonderful questions.
Yeah.
We are in
So
absolute awe of them. And yes.
Thank you. We really enjoyed reading it as well. Wish you all the very best with book 2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.